What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fit for Life podcast. What's up, Brooks?
Not much, man. It's Friday. We've got a great episode ahead of
Let's
us,
get
I
strong,
think.
right? That's what we're talking
Yeah.
about today.
Yeah. Muscle.
We've just
It-
we've just did a awesome 3-part series on how to lose fat. The last 3 episodes, and how to lose fat, how to maintain it forever. So if you've not checked those out, make sure you definitely go back and listen to those. But I think today's kind of stems a little bit from those episodes, because as we work with a lot of clients and what you see out there, I think when you start working with people more and more, you realize like people don't just want to lose weight. Like that's not necessarily usually, it's not just like, oh, I just want to see the scale go down and just like, that's all I care about. I think people think that, getting a defined, toned, fit looking body often comes from just like weight loss.
Mhm.
But it's not, because the reality is what makes you actually look like you work out, what makes you look fit, look healthy, look strong, look lean, comes from muscle and building muscle definition. And so what we wanted to go over today is really how to actually do that. And how to do that in a way that is, look, you guys aren't bodybuilders. You're not 22-year-old bro influencers that are coming here to just try to get, every single muscle building hack and squeeze out as much as possible. But for the people who are listening who, maybe you're a busy mom, or a busy dad, or someone who is just trying to, you want to just look more in shape, look more fit. That muscle is an important thing. You don't want to be a bodybuilder who lives in the gym. This episode's for you.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. We talked about it in the last few episodes of maximizing your fat loss, of maximizing or minimizing fat gain if you gain weight. We talked about it as an underlying piece of long-term maintenance, but it really can't be overstated. We say all the time, it's the compounding interest of your body. Like fat comes and goes, but building muscle over time is what just builds resilience. It builds more flexibility. It improves more flexibility with your nutrition, but it does improve your flexibility physically as well.
Mm-hmm.
Fun fact there. But I don't think people realize truthfully how much muscle people have when they look sculpted or defined or toned. That look is muscle mass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know what's funny is like one thing I've heard from working with moms throughout the years is like a common story is, maybe like in their 20s, maybe they played sports in high school and like they'll look and they just kind of like always looked a little bit fit, just like kind of like naturally, and like I feel like women always notice, like there's always like women always notice their butts, and then like men always notice their arms and like their chests, and like if those start changing and getting smaller, then they start freaking out, and so like I'll hear like, okay, maybe you had kids and over the years like maybe you weren't, maybe you were still working out, but you weren't necessarily lifting weights or anything like that. And like, you'll hear from moms, like, I don't really get like where my butt went. Like, I don't get why it's like, I haven't, like, it's weird. Cause I've lost weight. I don't really understand why it's not. And then like, you'll hear the same from men. They're like, I don't really understand. Like I still have kind of like a belly, but like my arms just don't look as defined. Do I need to lose more weight? And it's because you've lost muscle.
Mm-hmm.
And people think muscle is like, they immediately think of like bulky, right? And it's like, let's address that elephant in the room. Muscle does not make you bulky. Muscle is literally what makes you look defined. Mm-hmm. The way you get bulky, if you really want to get bulky, is to build muscle and eat an insane amount of food at the same time.
With a lot of fat on top of it.
A
Yeah.
lot. Like literally, you are there. You could try for 10 to 20 years and you still might not get bulky by building muscle.
Yeah, from true muscle mass.
Yeah.
And I think the like all else equal, if any given person who's not as trim or lean as they'd like to be, if you slap 5 to 10 pounds of muscle with 5 to 10 pounds of fat on them, like you're up 10 to 20 pounds from that. Like, yeah, you might feel bulky.
Yeah.
I would still say that that's in a better spot for you because you can losing fat is the change in fat on your body can be changed radically quicker than the amount of muscle on your body. And so it's really the nutrition side that's contributing to that. But still, at any given weight, every single time, you're going to rather have more muscle. It's never a negative, I guess, is what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean, where should we start here? I think a good place to start would be there's a lot of statistics that go around. We had a client ask about this week in a group. A lot of statistics going around about losing muscle after a certain age.
Yep.
Can you stop that? Can you build muscle? Like, when do the gains end? When is it possible? When is it not?
Yeah. So that's a great point. So it's from what most of the research shows is that we lose about 3 to 7% of our muscle mass every decade after 30. So you hit 30 years old and, slowly starts to decline. And I mean, you think about that over 20 years, 30 years, right? That starts to add up. And this is like, to paint this picture, right? If you lose muscle mass, right? Like, let's say you lose 10, 15%, 20% of your muscle mass over the course of 20 years. If your weight doesn't change,
yeah,
what takes its place? Body fat, right? And so like that's like the crazy thing that people like when people, especially because now you're starting to get into like the menopause years too, right? By that point that you've lost like 10 to 20% of your muscle mass, and it's like, okay, now you weigh the same. Maybe you've gained 10 pounds too, so you think it's like, oh my god, I've gained all this weight. But a lot of it's just because like you've lost muscle mass and body fat's taken its place. So like you literally feel and look fluffier, right? Because there's less muscle mass. And so I think a lot of people go down this route of like, I have to lose 20, 30 pounds. And it's like, but what if we think about the flip side, right? Because the reality is a lot of that's preventable. Yeah. You can maintain most of your muscle most of your life. Yeah. And even if you're now listening and you're 40 years old, 50 years old, and you're like, oh shit, well, is it too late now? No. There are studies that show that literally people, I think like there are studies in their 80s and their 90s that have really have gone on a well-designed strength training plan, prioritized protein, and been consistent with it, and they've built close to similar levels as people like in their 20s and 30s. Of course, not as much, but a very significant amount. Like, it's not like you can't build muscle when you're older.
Yeah. It's well, as you said, is it too late? Like that quote of best time to plant a tree, right, was 20 years ago. Second best time is right now.
Yeah.
Right? It's never too late. And I think it's very important. Well, two things. Number one, your muscle mass is the greatest predictor of your metabolism. It's the greatest predictor of how many calories you burn per day, every day. So you're also going to see statistics out there that say your metabolism declines over time, after 30, after 40, after 50, after 60. If we strip out the change in muscle mass and we don't lose muscle, we don't really see any decrease in your metabolism. So it's like, I think it's important to call that out. And with that statistic that Herman just shared of we lose X percent every year after 30, that's like on the whole. And if you listen to the last few episodes in this series, you should know that the biggest things you can be doing to preserve that muscle are the weight training and the protein intake, and also just, general sleep and stress. But the big ones are protein and weight training. And what are most people not doing? Like, your given person out there is not lifting weights. So that's not like, if you're listening to this and you're over 30 and you're lifting weights, you're not losing X% of your muscle mass every year. You can be gaining it. So that's like population level, but it's not a death sentence.
Yep. So we've beaten to the ground probably like why.
Yeah.
Why, right? So let's go into how.
Yes.
So I think number one, the top most important thing when it comes to building muscle is following a well-designed, consistent strength training plan.
Can I want to point out, your muscles respond to tension. And this is something that I personally, it took me a while to get away from this. I thought that unique blends of exercise do unique things that are really fancy and somehow like change your body in a special way. And the best way to think about your time exercising is, what stimulus are you after? Because you can very quickly end up doing like HIIT, because you saw an article of how jacked people are that do HIIT training or whatever it is. So I like to think of exercise as 3 buckets. We're doing it to build muscle, which is dependent on tension, and we're about to go deep into that. Or it's for burning calories, to help you manage your calories, which is, in my opinion, kind of a overrated way to really move the needle, but it can help. And then third, it's to drive cardiovascular adaptations, aerobic adaptations. So that'd be like, or brain health, right? Like, there's a lot of benefits from those things. So let's just get out of the way that, like, combining your weight training with a Metcon or a HIIT workout to like be gassed and stimulating body comp change in this crazy combination, the goal is the goal. So like, this conversation we're about to have is going to be what matters for stimulating muscle growth.
Yeah, because it's a great point, because I think a lot of people think of, well, there's 2 things. One, to your point, like, I think you see people who advertise workouts and you assume that that's what you're going to look like if you do the workout.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
It's so influential on the way you interpret whatever they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like I had mentioned, I think I mentioned maybe on this podcast or our other one before, but like, I spent years doing P90X and T25 and Insanity because I wanted to look like Sean T. I was like, I just like, that guy looks awesome. I want to look like that. And meanwhile, like, that's not how he built his body. There's no way. Like, he was doing heavy strength training behind the scenes, probably for years before he ever got to Beachbody and ever even started that program. But this is what they do. They find people, the V-Shred guy, right? Like, that's an actor that they hired who probably lifted very heavy for a long time. Like, it's not because he did the V-Shred, you know what I mean? Like, it's such an incredible piece of marketing to point out that, like, the workouts that you see, these really sweaty, high intensity dudes that are jacked and these women who are like 15% body fat, and you're like, oh my God, I want to look like them. Like, there's a very good chance that they did not actually do that workout to make themselves look like that.
Yeah, great call. And I think anyone that you see, a lot of those people, it might not even be that they ever looked any different than they do now. Like, the people that naturally have the top 0.1% physiques are gifted genetically. And so if you go find someone out there that at one point, because I will crack up, there are some guys that are just so jacked and they post their before and after, and they were like 13 And you could see that they just had muscle. Like,
Yeah.
you could see it at like 13, and it's like, okay, yeah, yeah, cool, man. That's
Look
a
at LeBron in high school.
yeah, yeah. And it's like those before and afters. It's like, all right, man. So you went through puberty and just like lost like 10 pounds of fat and
Yeah.
always had this muscle. Like, I'm
Dude, there was
not.
this. I saw someone posted a picture of like this model on like a magazine, and she was like, and the picture was something like 5 things I do to look like this like year round, and she was and the person who posted this was like, more like hot model shares 5 things that has nothing to do with her being naturally hot. Like, yes, that is spot on.
Yeah. I mean, you were talking about it on the group call last week, like somebody, who has just luscious hair, and it's like,
Right.
here's my hair routine. It's like, it reminds me of all the success books of Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, the 10 secrets of
Yeah.
Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. And it's like, no, Steve Jobs is Steve Jobs. He just happened to, abide by that. I mean, it
Yeah.
has nothing, oh, yeah, Steve Jobs adopted those principles at 10 years old. And
Which
that's what,
and dude, to that point, like what Steve Jobs does, well, not does anymore, but obviously, but like like in a prime of Apple, like to say like what Steve Jobs does every day, like no, that's not what you want to look. You want to know what Steve Jobs did when he was 18, when he was in a garage building
right.
Apple every day, right? Like, and the same with this, like. I don't want to know what Sean T does today, like what workouts. I want to know what he did to end up looking like that, right? And so that's, I think, to circle this all back, don't fall for just like, oh, this workout is going to make me look like that person. What we're sharing today is like how to actually build, the looks of like a lot of those people that you see that one, like, yeah, don't look at them and say, I want to look exactly like that person, because to your point, a lot of that's just like genetic. A lot of that is realistically like performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's just like photoshopped online. But how do you build kind of like that lean, fit, defined, toned physique?
Yeah. Yeah. And I know we need to dive into the tactics, but, it also can be easy to be fooled. You look a lot bigger when there's no fat on your body. So it's easy to see people's transformations online that lost like 40, 50, 60 pounds and be like, oh, they did this and it was all this cardio or it was fasting or something like that. If you have a baseline of muscle already, a million things can work and you're going to look like way more muscular because it's popping out. So the person that's starting at 250 who has like good muscle, this is when you see like a lineman or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
A football lineman drop a ton of body fat. They're shredded because they have so much muscle underneath. Just another call out, not to be fooled by someone losing a substantial amount of weight and looking like they built a ton of muscle during that process. It's just popping out now. So keep that in mind, because if you get fooled by that and distracted by that, and you're not really focusing on what we're about to break down, you can cut a lot of fat and have nothing underneath, and then you're skin and bones, skinny fat. That's how you end up in that place. To round this out and get into it, if you're seeing someone like Sean T or whoever it is, go look for the person who had a before picture that was not muscular at all, and ask them what they did, and they're going to tell you, I lifted heavy weights in the gym. I was not doing cardio mixed with, like, let's make the goal. Let's build muscle. Yeah, where do we start? Days per week, splits?
So, well, I think number one is to just really understand what a strength training plan actually is.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think people think of strength training, and like, and you'll see this, right? We get a lot of clients who come in and they fill out their intake form and they'll check like, oh, I'm an intermediate lifter or I'm an advanced lifter, right? And then you're like, oh, like, tell me about your routine. And it's like, well, I've been using weights in my boot camp class for the last 2 years, or, I'll go in and I'll do the leg extension machine and like, just like kind of like random exercises, random things. And they're never really tracking anything. They're never really like actually challenging themselves to increase over time. Like, and I resonate with this a lot because, like I did Orange Theory for a long time. So I was using weights. I did Peloton and I did like the strength class in there. And I think those were like great introductory things to kind of like get used to using dumbbells. But, I'll never forget a Mind Pump was the one that kind of like really turned me on to like, hey, here's an actual strength training plan. And I followed ones in the past, but it was like, it was like, I always like somehow got the ones that was just like built for this like 15-year experienced bodybuilder that were like, it was like way too much volume and it would never last. But like a good strength training plan, like I think people don't understand. It is difficult to build a strength training plan if you don't have any idea like what you're doing or any experience. Like it took me years to get good at it, and I'm still learning all the time how to make it better. Like there is a legitimate science behind building a plan, meaning like how many days per week, what exercises, how many sets, what reps are you doing, what are the rest periods, which is super important. Like, and I honestly think like instead of breaking all that down today, we should just do a whole nother episode on it because that in itself is like a 2-hour topic.
Yeah. I view those things like very downstream.
It's like in your perspective, like what classifies as strength training?
Given the goal of building muscle.
Yep.
Okay. So what I typically tell people right off the bat is it's kind of like, more of your typical like bro bodybuilding type training in a way. Sorry if that like turns you off from it, because as we said, this takes years. It's not like you're gonna just like do a dumbbell curl and wake up with 10 pounds of muscle tomorrow. But I think the most fundamental principle that we should like really distill first, and then we can kind of branch out from there. Let me know if you disagree. Is just what is progressive overload? Like, what is that in general? And that is the core mechanism that we can measure muscle growth through progressive overload. And the general idea is if you challenge your muscle slightly beyond its capacity for what it can handle, it will adapt and grow more muscle tissue to handle that. And real quick, I was going to point this out when you were talking about like the CrossFit or the classes that have weights included. You can build some muscle with that when you start out. It's just going to dwindle very quickly how much muscle you can build. Like at first, if you haven't been using your bicep for 20 years and you do some curls in a class and it's not structured, but you're putting tension on those muscles, you're gonna build a little bit of muscle. It just very quickly dwindles away. So like if you're listening to this and you joined Orange Theory or CrossFit or something like that, and you really saw a lot of progress and you're like, what the hell's going on? Like I am plateaued. I am, I'm kind of maintaining my weight, but I'm not. After, I don't know. What do you think? I would say like even within 3 to 6 months that progress is going to severely slow down as far as muscle gain.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say when I did Orange Theory, like I feel like I would, within like a month or so, like I'd be like, oh, I look better than I did before, but like it wouldn't like progress. You know what I mean? It wouldn't change, and then it wouldn't really last. That's the thing. Like if I stopped doing it, it would just go away. And I think because a lot of that's like you're probably just like also losing a little bit of body fat. from just like burning extra calories. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like to your point, progressive overload, which like we need a better term because it's like, I think for like the average person, it sounds way too sciencey. It sounds way too like bro, you know what I mean? Like, but it is true. Like that's the pinnacle of all this. Like it is the key, like everything else you could do wrong. And if you progressive overload, you'll still build muscle. You know what I mean? And so like the simplest way I think about it is just lifting heavier over time.
Yeah.
You know, like that's all it comes down to is like over time, you know, if you're taking a squat and let's say you start with the barbell, right? And the barbell's 45 pounds. And then over time you add 10 pounds to it, you add 20 pounds to it. And I'm not saying over time as in like next week, but if you look back in 6 months from now and you're like, okay, cool. So before I was squatting 100 pounds, now I'm squatting 130 pounds. I guarantee you've built muscle.
Yeah. Over time, lifting heavier, I would say like a shorter term horizon is just maybe I'd slightly tweak that to say doing more.
Yeah.
Because it can come from, you can progress with the 5-pound weights at home for a while if you're doing more reps with those over time. So yeah, that's a great point. Progressive overload. It's just like, huh?
The caveat to that is I just think of like, I think a lot of people start strength training or they think of it like they do in their HIIT classes where it's like you have 30 seconds and we're doing bicep curls. And so then they're just like, I'm just trying to do as many reps as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. And so like, if you did 20 reps in your class in 30 seconds and now you did 30 reps, that doesn't mean you built muscle. You know what I mean? Because like, I think a lot of people think of like exercise as like these timed intervals always. And they're like, oh, it's like, you've built your cardiovascular capacity. Like you're doing it faster, but really part of like a big piece of this is you have to get relatively close to failure, like actual muscular failure, not that you just got tired, you know, not that like, oh, I'm doing a bunch of burpees and I only got to 8 versus 10 because I got tired, but you're doing a bicep curl and you're bringing the weight up. And on the 8th one, you're like, oh my God, I can barely bring it up. Yeah. Right. That like, and then the next week you come back and you're like, all right, now I did 9 reps instead of 8. And on the 9th one, I could barely bring it up. And then, you know, one more week and now you did 10. And then the week after you're like, you know what? I was doing 15 pounds. Maybe let's try 20 pounds. Mm-hmm. Right. And you do 6 reps with the 20 pounds. Like that is progressive overload. And that if you're doing that over and over and over again, you're building muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great call. That's the assumption that we have to work through as we talk about everything downstream, because like to think about it, like it's easy to say, are you progressing or are you doing more? But it's like, if I take this pen and I do 10 curls with this pen and tomorrow I do 11 curls and the next day I do 12, I am so drastically far from pushing that muscle to its limit that you're not building muscle if you're getting stronger, but you're not pushing yourself. Yeah. So, in proximity to failure, like what we see is as long as you're within, I mean, you could even say 5 reps of failure to start for most people, but over time we want to be getting closer and closer. And I think it's important to call out that like, if you can't get another rep with good form, I would call that failure. Because I think a lot of people are like, oh, I have to be like really straining, but then they're like contouring their body and everything else is moving except for that body part.
Which is that's an important piece of this. Like your form and thinking of the movement as like practice, I think is a really important piece of, because to your point, like a lot of people will just like, they'll just get the weight up and they don't think at all about like, am I getting better at this movement?
Yeah.
But the more you focus on like I think of strength training as like a martial art. It's like everyone starts as a white belt.
Yeah.
And then you've got pro bodybuilders are like black belts, right? And there's everything in between. And that's the really cool thing about strength training, is because there's so much to learn over the years that like you never really are done learning.
Yeah.
But the like treating the movements the same way you would think of as like a golf swing, right? Like there's so many intricate things to learn. And so like I think a lot of people start and they just kind of move weight around.
Yeah.
And two, they also kind of get discouraged because they're like, oh, I don't feel like I really know what I'm doing. I'm not really good at this. And it's like, that's the point. So like literally think of the movement as you're practicing and getting better at this. And the better you get at your squats, the better you get at, deadlifts, the better you get at pushing a weight from your chest and pulling it towards you. That all carries over to real life, And so it is a really important thing. Like I think always trying to focus on good form. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't be afraid that like if it's not perfect form, you're going to hurt yourself. But I think the more you focus on that, and like, so if I'm doing a bicep curl again, and by the 7th one, my form is like to your point, I'm starting to bend over. I'm starting to swing my body just to get the weight up. Like, no. Once you can't execute the rep with good form, end the set and record it there. And that's where you are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good explanation. I think a big one that we should cover right now is also prepare for it to feel a bit different than what you maybe know exercise to be or a good workout to be. Because a lot of people come in and they're like, these workouts aren't that hard. But by hard, they mean I'm not out of breath, I'm not sweating profusely, and they expect those things to be indicators of building muscle. So
right.
When you make this switch, when we say close to failure, we mean in the target muscle, not to your whole body. So we want to be reaching that point within whatever muscle we're working. So you're going to be resting. Like we're going to be resting more, and we'll get more into the nitty gritty, I assume, later. But like, you want to be resting enough so that you're not breathing heavy when you start your next set, so that you can really push that specific muscle, and you're not limited by your breath. Because once again, like your muscle knows tension, and we're trying to slowly put more tension on that muscle week over week. So I think like as far as making this switch, and we've alluded to this, and you mentioned it, but 4 weeks minimum, you should be keeping things the same week over week, like going through the same exercise and progressing it week over week. But would you put an upper limit on how long you can do that if you're progressing?
How long you can what?
Keep a specific plan.
Oh, not necessarily. I mean, like, I think, but to kind of circle back to that and back up for a second, that is an important factor to this, right? Is like, you're not changing the workouts every week.
Yeah.
Which I think is another thing that people aren't very used to when they haven't strength trained, is that like they're used to coming into class, doing different workouts every week, right? Or finding random YouTube videos, or going into the gym and just like doing whatever muscles they want to work on that day, right? This is like a strength training plan is you have a consistent, whether it's 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, whatever it is, here's the workouts for the week. And we're going to do the same ones for, I'd say minimum 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
For most of our clients, we do like 6 weeks. For some, you do even longer. And I think at the end of the day, as long as you, one, are continuing to progress, meaning that you are still increasing reps or increasing weight, or you don't have any like joint pain or like feeling, pain from any of the exercises. And then also you're just not bored, right? Then there's no reason you can't keep going.
Yeah. If you're still progressing, it's like, you don't need to change it up at all. And I think you may be listening to this because I talk to a lot of people that go to CrossFit, and they're like, well, we do 3 sets of 5 on like deadlift or squatting or bench press. and we're doing something like that every week at the beginning of our classes, and I'm pushing myself close to failure, why doesn't that work? A lot of the adaptation the first few weeks you're going to have to specific movements, your body learns really quickly how to do things more efficiently. And so you're gonna see a lot of like just coordination improvements that will see a massive jump in like the weight you can use on a movement. Because like think about going and sitting down on a chest press machine and you do it the first time and your body's kind of just like, I've never done this before, what's going on? If you go back the next week, you're probably going to do a lot more just because you've done it before and your body learned how to generate. I don't want to get all wordy, but like to generate that force to push the machine. So the reason why we're saying at least bare minimum 4 weeks is that you technically can be challenging yourself and building a little bit of muscle if you're like kind of all over the place week over week, but you're pushing yourself. It's just really hard to find that sweet spot of like incremental improvements week over week with whatever exercise it is that you're using. So that's why if your CrossFit class is doing strength, you know, talk to the gym owner and be like, hey, can we do like, let's do the same thing on Mondays for a 4 to 12 week block to get stronger in that specific movement over time.
Which they probably won't.
Yeah, they probably won't.
Realistically.
Yeah. And that's where if you love those things, it's great that there's weights in there, but I would supplement it. I would maybe do 2 days a week of 30 minutes direct strength training on your own outside of those classes so that you can kind of get the best of both worlds. But
yeah.
Okay, so where we're at is progressive overload, meaning do a little bit more each week. Keep things consistent for at least 4 weeks, but you can go a lot longer. Should we talk about, we talked about rest, like you're not going to be resting as much. You're going to be focused on taking each movement close to failure. You don't have to be at failure, but challenging yourself. Where should we go next? Like equipment? Should we talk about days per week? Should we talk about, where do you want to go?
I think we should talk about kind of like the core movements that I think should be part of like most people's plans if their goal is to kind of squeeze out as much, you know, squeeze out as much progress as they can without living in the gym for a crazy amount.
Yeah.
And I tell me if you agree with this. Like I would say in most plans, you should probably have some form of a squat, probably some form of a lunge too, some form of like a hip hinge, meaning, you know, when you're bending at your hip versus bending at your knees. So like a deadlift or a Romanian deadlift, some form of a chest press, shoulder press, and then some form of like a row or like a chin up.
Yes. So, and what Herman's talking about right now, if you're listening to this, you've probably heard the term compound exercise.
Yep.
Those are exercises that include multiple muscle groups or multiple, they're not isolate, like a bicep curl would be like an isolation or accessory movement, while a squat is a compound exercise. So you said squat, hinge, and lunge. The beauty of compound exercises is we're going to be hitting multiple muscle groups at once, and especially when you're starting out, you can be growing, you know, multiple muscle groups really, really well. So yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's more time efficient to include mostly those compounds, especially at the beginning, and then you can layer in some of the more accessory stuff later, or just add it from the start, but just not a ton of it.
Yeah, it's just that's like I think more so is just that there's nothing wrong with doing like a leg extension or a hamstring curl, you know, or like a bicep curl, right? Like all those things are great, but I think a lot of people like they spend a majority of their exercises. Like they'll just do like abductors with like resistance bands, and then they'll do like donkey kicks. And it's like that's the majority of their workouts. And so like I think that's the point, is that probably, what do you think, like 60 to 70% should probably be more of these compound exercises, and then layer in the accessory movements on top of that.
Yeah. And this is where you could go in and not touch a squat and not touch a hinge and just do all accessory, but it will take you a lot longer. And it's just like a lot lower ROI for your time. And I assume most people listening to this aren't interested in spending a ton of time in the gym.
Because how many days would you say most of your clients lift a week?
3.
Yeah, I'd say that's the most common.
Yeah. You could make progress with 2. You
Yeah.
could make progress with 5 or 6, but that's, unless you want to do that, it's just probably not necessary.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to what you were saying, I mean, the way I think about upper body, and if people are interested in this, like a squat pattern is going to hit your quads, which is like the front of your thigh. It's going to hit your hamstrings, which is the back of your thigh. It's going to hit your glutes, which is your butt. Everybody knows that. That's going to hit, like squats can hit everything. Depending on how you're squatting, it's going to bias a little bit more on one of those things. A lunge, going to hit everything too. But, more primarily, probably for most people doing it, is going to be like the front of your thighs. And then a hinge is totally biasing the back of your legs. The upper body, one way I think it's really easy to think about is like, I don't know, you let me know if this is not helpful to listeners, but I just think of it as horizontal or vertical, and then push or pull.
Yeah.
So a horizontal push is a chest press. If you're watching anywhere, I'm demonstrating. A horizontal push is a chest press. A horizontal row is like a bent over row or a cable row. And then a vertical press is a shoulder press, and a vertical pull is a pull up or a lat pull down. And that's going to hit everything. You're going to hit your chest with the vertical push. You're going to hit, or with the horizontal push, you're going to hit your shoulders. With the vertical push, you're going to hit your full back with the rowing in each direction. And then you can start to layer in accessory stuff after that. But
Which, like, if you literally just did those,
yeah,
you would build, you'd build a great, very fit, lean looking body.
Yeah, that's more than enough, because and people might be like, what about arms? Well, your biceps and your triceps are getting a lot of work when you're doing a chest press.
Yeah.
Your triceps are getting hit. If you're doing
Chin ups,
a chin up or a bent over row, your biceps are getting secondarily hit in addition to your back. So you're that's like the core of a program, is what we just went over. You're going to hit your entire body.
Now, the beauty of strength training is like, then if you're like, no, but I want bigger biceps, right? Or like, but I really want abs, or I really want my shoulders to pop. You can pick and choose, right? Like you can choose to say, okay, sweet, for the next 6 weeks, I'm going to add more shoulder volume.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to like really go hard on my arms. And you can, and you can really choose where you want to build that muscle, which is really, really cool.
I would love to throw in right now that when you're first starting out, you don't have to choose.
Yeah.
Because a lot of clients come in, they're like, I really want to work on my chest. I'm like, if you, like, absolutely, let's put the chest movement first in your workouts on those days. But if you're generally like beginner to intermediate training with strength training, like a dedicated strength training program, you can grow everything at once. You don't, like, we're not at the point where we have to, like, okay, let's back off the leg volume to prioritize the upper body. Like, you can really work on everything. And another misconception I see a lot of clients have is they're like, yeah, I just feel like this body part is maybe smaller or whatever. But it's like, then we lose some body fat and they're like, oh, So
Yeah.
it's very hard to tell like what's underdeveloped. So for most people, I'm like, let's just grow everything and
And then see.
then we'll see. Yeah, we can
Yeah.
always specialize later. And if you really are persistent about that, like, no problem with it. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's cool at the beginning because you can grow it all at once.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, I think the really important piece to all this then is rest,
Yeah.
right? I think that's something that this is one of the hardest things for people to absorb and and accept, especially if you're coming from the Orange Theories and the Pelotons and like these places where it's all about not resting, right? It's all about like, let's do as much as we can in as little time as possible. And I think people will start strength training and I'll prescribe, like I would say most exercises you should have to rest at least 1 to 2 minutes in
Yeah.
between.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if you're doing like barbell squats and everything, like maybe even 2 to 3, I mean, some would even argue more, probably for more advanced lifters for sure. But like, if you're coming and you're saying, "Hey, dude, I don't need 2 minutes in between this exercise," I will always challenge back and say, "You can go heavier then."
Especially if it's a compound exercise.
Yeah, like
Especially if it's a leg compound exercise.
yeah,
You are
minimum 60 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. You are not resting 1 minute between sets of heavy squats if you're
No,
taking those close to failure. Like, you're not, it's just not happening. If you're in good cardiovascular shape and you're doing curls or an upper body movement, like, it's much more likely I would just say never go under a minute. But a good general framework is if you're pushing yourself hard enough, you should bring your heart rate and your breathing back to
yeah,
normal. Yeah.
that's a good right. Like if you're going back to the set, it shouldn't feel like this is turning into a cardio workout because like you're so out of breath. So that's a good, especially like if you're doing something like lunges, right? Like
Yeah.
that's one that like it always takes the breath out of me. And so
Oh
like
my God,
yeah,
yeah.
you might need an extra minute or two. That's okay. And if people say, well, but like I'm trying to, I don't want to be in there for over an hour. Okay, that's fine. I would honestly rather you do less sets, but actually need the rest in between those sets because you're going heavy enough and do less, go heavier, get that adequate rest for whatever time you need in the gym. I bet you will get more results doing that than trying to squeeze in as many suboptimal sets as possible while without any rest, which means that you're not going as heavy inherently.
Yep. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's what, and you might see, this is a term, I don't know if our listeners are familiar with it, but you might hear people talk about junk volume. And that's essentially just a bunch of volume where you're not pushing yourself close to failure. So like you're just spending all this time and it's not that it goes to nothing, but you just be way better off. Your joints are going to thank you a lot more to just really push yourself, rest, get a great stimulus out of all your sets of your workout instead of doing 3 times as much but never really pushing yourself and fully resting.
Which is unfortunately what you see in like a lot of gyms too with
Mm-hmm.
personal trainers is like I'll literally see like I'll do like a set of a barbell squat or something and then I'll be sitting there resting and I'll see like a personal trainer taking someone through a workout and they're like they might do some lunges and then they go and they do the battle ropes and then they go and they do some TRX thing and then they're trying to make it fun and novel
Mm-hmm.
because it makes you feel like you're doing more, which makes you want to pay them more.
Yeah.
Like that's ultimately what it is. And I'm like, dude, you would get so much more just having that person increase the weights on those lunges and have them go heavier and then let them actually rest in between. I know it's harder to sell, but they would get way more impact in the long run.
Yep. Yeah. 100%.
Okay, so those I feel like those are like the big principles. Should we talk real quick about nutrition?
Oh, yeah. Um, so, I mean, baseline, you got to get enough protein. That's the biggest thing on the nutrition side, and that's usually going to cap out at about 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. if you have a lot of weight to lose, like you're 30 plus 50 plus pounds overweight, you can maybe just go off of your goal weight instead of your current weight. But protein is number one by far. Yeah, where do you want to take this? Because calorie balance, a, a big misconception is that like you need to be gaining weight to build muscle. Not true.
Right.
You can build muscle if you're losing weight, if you're maintaining weight, if you're gaining weight. Over time, as you get more advanced, it's going to be harder to do without, eating at maintenance or gaining weight. But for most of us, it's still realistic. Like the muscle is signaling dependent, not calorie balance dependent, and signaling dependent is the weight training and the protein intake. So, warning though, if you're cutting a lot of weight, it's going to be harder. It's going to be a lot harder to add muscle, especially if it's rapid. Like if you're losing a lot of weight. So even more of a reason to not take a fat loss phase and lose as much weight as possible as quickly as possible, because it's going to be really tough to build muscle in that environment.
Yeah. I would say if you're at a weight where you need to lose weight to improve your health because, you've gotten blood work done, you were at the doctor and like cholesterol's high, blood pressure, like all those things, glucose, that, and you are technically overweight or obese, and losing weight will significantly improve your health. I would still prioritize that while strength training to at least try to preserve muscle and maybe even build a little bit more. If you're at a healthy weight where you're like, all my blood work is good, I just want to lose like 10 pounds, I just want to get a little bit leaner, I would argue that person, don't go into a cut, don't go into a deficit. At the very least, just eat at maintenance.
Yeah.
Because the cool thing about building muscle is that when you start following what we've laid out in this episode today, your first 6 to 12 months, you can build a significant amount of muscle while losing body fat at the same time, which gets much harder later on. But the term newbie gains is a very real thing. So take advantage of it, right? Like if you have 10 pounds to lose, I think that if you just focus on eating regularly without trying to lose weight, prioritize protein, do what we laid out with the strength training in this episode for the 6 months, and you're going to be pretty damn happy with how you look after that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's maybe just to throw this in, when Herman's saying if your blood work looks good, there's a lot of nuance there, obviously. But I think if we could give one metric, let me know if you disagree. I would say your HbA1c. That's hemoglobin A1c. So everyone's heard of glucose, resting glucose measure. That's like it moves a lot, depending on the day, depending on what you've eaten. HbA1c is basically a measure of your blood sugar over the last like 2 to 3 months. And so pre-diabetes is over 5.6%. So like if you're hearing us say if your blood work looks good, if you want just like one thing to look at, I'd go look at that. And if it's over 5.6%, that's an indicator that on average over the last few months, your blood sugar has been a little too high. And that causes a lot of things. I'm sure everyone's heard of insulin sensitivity, but just a little quick way to measure that. And that doesn't really have to do a ton with like how much carbs you're eating if we equate for just overall calorie balance and how much you've been eating and how much you've been moving. But anyways, muscle also helps with that number because you get to utilize more glucose with more muscle mass. But nutrition. Any other pieces on that side?
I think the one other thing I would mention with nutrition is that it's going to be a lot easier to have energy for your workouts and to build muscle that also looks tone defined full if you are also eating a good amount of carbs. And I think that's another change for a lot of people, is that, like, people have been conditioned to think carbs are bad for you. Carbs make you fat. But the reality is carbs fuel your muscle. They make your muscles look more full, and they fuel your workouts as well. And yeah, you can do it without carbs technically, but it is a hell of a lot easier for most people when you eat a decent amount of carbs. It doesn't have to be, 300, 400 grams of carbs by any means, but what do you think? Like, I would say like at least 1 to 2 grams per pound of body weight.
Yeah. This is one where I'm just like, for most clients, focus on calories and protein, get your fiber, and do what you prefer. Like I'm not too worried on a minimum carb number, just because I feel like unless you're deliberately going low carb, it's not going to be a problem for most people, especially if you get enough fiber. Like,
which people do though. Like, that's the thing. Like, I think especially, and they'll, like, I think that meal timing is not something for most people to worry about. But I do think, like, if you work out around lunchtime, get some carbs for breakfast. Like, I do think that will make a significant difference in how you feel in your workout. And if you feel like you have more energy, you're going to lift heavier.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest thing on food timing that I usually, I've kind of come back around on this. Like, fasting can work for some people and their schedules, but like most people, I would recommend a high protein, high fiber, moderate carb breakfast.
Yeah.
It's it's going to keep you more full. It's going to make the decisions the rest of the day a lot easier. But yeah, like, generally spacing out your carb intake with your protein intake throughout the day, and getting some in pre-training. If you can't stomach food first thing in the morning and you're going to work out, that's okay. Just eat after. Like, totally fine. A lot of these things end up being kind of majoring in the minors and not making a huge difference. All else equal, I'd probably say, yeah, grab something and have something before you work out. But if you like to work out fasted, just be consistent with it, and that's fine.
Yeah. So just wrapping that all up, you don't have to carb load and eat bowls and bowls of pasta every night. Just don't be afraid of carbs.
Yeah. And this conversation completely changes if you're doing any sort of endurance sports that are longer than like an hour and a half or 2 hours. Like, you definitely should be focusing on carbs. But
yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to, so are we going to do a part 2 to this, to breaking up into splits, days per week?
Yeah.
Reps.
I think so.
Exercise selection, all those things?
Yep.
Cool. But honestly, like, if you take what we talked about here and your program you're following lines up with everything we said here, you're going to make great progress. Like, like, we haven't even talked about what your split is. We haven't talked about how many days per week it is. We said like 2 to 4 generally, 3 for most people. We haven't talked about any of these like super specific things, and there's a reason for that, because just like on the nutrition side, all these tiny little nuanced things, if you have the general principle of pushing yourself, keeping it consistent, increasing weight or reps week over week, you're going to make progress. You're going to build muscle. Like, we can get into more in the future, but like, you're on a great track if you've checked the boxes we've talked about here.
Perfect. Yeah. I think so. We'll do a part 2 to this. If there's anything, if you're listening to this too, and there's any questions you have or want to learn more, please leave a comment, leave a great review, but leave a comment and let us know. Because I think we're trying to make sure that these are high level enough that it's easy to understand. But also, if there is something deeper, things that you're like, I don't know if you really covered this deep enough, like, let us know. And that's great feedback for us to have. And then, I'll put in one plug. If you want to just take all the guesswork out of this, and make this super easy, and we're like, I don't even know where to find a good plan. Well, good news for you is we got the Fit for Life program, which we'll put a link in the show notes. That is the easiest way to just follow a consistent strength training plan. You get all the workouts done for you. You get a track in our app. You get a awesome community around you. People are trying to push for the same goals, and they're not bodybuilders. They are real people who have families and careers and just want to get more fit and healthy too. So if you're interested, we'll put a link there, and then we'll do part 2 that kind of goes more in detail on what your workouts, the structure of them should look like.
Yeah. Great call. And I wanted to throw in, if you're hearing what Herman just said, we are talking specifically to you. Don't hear just like, if you're hearing him say, if you have questions or there's something you want more of, send us a message. Literally you, if you're hearing this, we're talking to you. It's not like anybody else. You're the exact person we want to hear from. So thank you for listening to us, and see you in the next one.